Hi everyone, welcome back to Stereo Niche. I'm Scott Schneider. Hey, this week it's a little bit different. As you know, I am a vintage audio collector and my reviews are all around vintage audio gear, and a lot of those are around higher end vintage audio speakers. So it might seem a little unusual when I'm going to review a new speaker from BenQ, which is the TreVolo U. Now why would I do that since I'm all about vintage? Well, the truth of the matter is I work from home, and when I'm working from home, I actually spend more time listening to a very tiny speaker throughout the day more than anything else. That's this one here. So I was very excited when I received this information about this particular speaker because it has a design that's much improved and it's all around sound quality. So if I could get any improvement in sound quality, I was all for it. So I've been using this for a while, so stick around and I'll tell you my thoughts. All right, so this is the BenQ TreVolo U speakerphone. So one of the things I want to point out from the very beginning is what drew me to this particular speakerphone. And that's the fact of how wide is the front here and this speaker cover. So what I noticed right away was that it had a large surface area, which to me meant it can accommodate a larger speaker driver. But as well, it was pointing toward the actual listener. So all of the speakerphones I've used prior, all of them were upward facing, upward firing. So the sound was going straight up and not toward the actual listener. All modern speakers are built to be pointed at the listener. So that way you can get the most music information. Well, the same holds true for a speakerphone. Just because it may not be music you're listening to doesn't, change the fact that you need to get the most music or sound information straight to your ears. So they've actually have a 12-degree angle of this, so it most likely will sit a little bit lower than your ears, and so it's angled up a little bit to help, with that trajectory of the sound. So as I suspected before I even got into some of the specs, behind this grill is a lot of speaker technology. So just like this is a hi-fi speaker, it has more than one speaker driver behind the grill cover here. So this is a two-way design. It has a tweeter and a mid-range woofer here. And together, those are combined to accommodate and cover the full sound spectrum that our ears can hear. Now on the TreVolo, it has the same thing. Behind here is a tweeter and a mid-range woofer. So when you put those together, it can combine and cover a much more broad sound spectrum that our ears can hear. In addition to that, it has something called a passive radiator. Passive radiator is not an active speaker, but it does enhance the lower end. So they've even incorporated that technology into this small speaker as well. All combined, what that does is give you a much smoother and a much better sound than otherwise accommodate with just a single speaker. So some of the other features that it has is a microphone here, and this little parabolic lens, pulls in the sound, pulls in the voice to the microphone for much more clarity on the listener's end. This other little, it looks like an empty circle, or a hole, but it's actually a proximity sensor. And there is the capability of the phone to adjust the volume, and adjust it based on how close or how far away you are from the speaker itself. So that's what that is. I'm going to go around to the back side, and on the back there's pretty clean except this little cover here that when moved over shows off and opens up the access to two ports. One port is the USB connector. This is for charging the unit. It does have an internal battery. If you were to use it by battery only, it would last roughly 12 hours. I use the USB port and I connect it straight to my computer, so it does stay charged at all times. I don't take it mobile myself, but if you wanted to do that, you certainly can. The other connector here is a 3.5 millimeter connection. Great little feature. This makes it backward compatible. If you happen to have an older device that does not accommodate Bluetooth connectivity, you can actually manually connect the two and incorporate your speakerphone into your device. So very nice feature to have for older devices, and it would be a heck of an upgrade to add a speakerphone to it. So I'm going to close that back up, and then I'm going to take a look at the controls which are on top of the device. Very straightforward. So the very first button here to the right is the power on button, and once you do turn it on, it makes an audible confirmation sound. So now it's on, and it will now pair. So that second tone was it pairing to my computer. So the reason it did that automatically is because this is not the first time. Once you've first initially have paired it to your device, it will automatically pair once the speakerphone is turned on again. So, but to do it initially, the first time you would hit your Bluetooth indicator here, it would blink. You would go into your device and then pair the two. You only need to do that once. Once you've done that, then it will pair automatically. Unless, of course, you were to unpair it so you could pair this with something else. Then of course you would have to pair it again. But if you normally connect it to a single device, it will pair each time automatically. The next controls are the volume control, a plus for increasing and a minus for decreasing. But there's one more feature. If you were to push both of these buttons at the same time, it would mute the microphone. And then there's also a little light here that would turn on to let you know that the microphone was muted. The next indicator here, this little button, is for the automated volume control, and that's where that proximity sensor comes into play. It will adjust the volume and the microphone depending on how close or how far away you are from the speaker. Lastly is the mode button. So there are 3 modes. The first mode being music only, and there's a little indicator, light indicator here. If there's no light, it's in music only mode. I'll tell you that it did sound comparable to other, my children have some Bluetooth speakers, and I thought this sounded just as good as those other dedicated speakers. Can hold its own, and being portable, having its own battery, you can take it anywhere you like. Push this button once, and it will turn on a little indicator. And now you're in the mode to watch and listen to online classes. And so what it's doing here differently from the music only mode is that this internal chip, that's sort of an internal EQ, is narrowing the bandwidth of what the speakers will play. Now, why is that important? Well, for music, you want to hear the full spectrum of the sound as much as you can to cover as much as the low end information, low end, of the sound spectrum, as well as the high end. But when it comes to learning, you're there to learn and listen to what is being spoken. So the internal chip changes what this output to the speakers to focus on the human voice. And it does this by also listening in and determining whether it's a female or a male voice, and it emphasizes certain aspects of that to make it extremely clear. That way you don't miss anything. If there's something being said, you're hearing the closest audible translation of that through the speakerphone to make sure that it's understood. So very important feature and very important reason to switch that mode out of music mode into the online classroom mode. And you push it one more time and it goes into live learning mode, which is essentially meeting mode. That's what I would call it. So that if you're having an online meeting, then your microphone is now enabled and you can have a back and forth dialogue with the participants in your meeting. Same technique here on the speaker itself, and then it's reducing the spectrum of the output through the speaker to focus on the human voice. That way, any reply, anything that they say in the speaker, in the meeting can be understood, when you hear it through the speakers. So that's the 3 modes, and that's the mode I listen to it in, I use it in, because again, I'm in meetings constantly throughout the day, and so that's the mode that I would have it in. So that's pretty much a quick summary I'll give you some up close views of it now so you can see, how it looks. And then I'll come back and give you my thoughts on actual using it, and some pros and cons about my experience with the BenQ TreVolo U. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed those up close shots. Now I wanted to show you my actual work environment and where I work with my coworkers and customers, and for 5 to sometimes 7 hours a day even, I'm on the phone and in meetings and talking to customers and coworkers, and it's a dialogue, back and forth. And my phone, speakerphone, it does sit back a little bit further, but it's what I'm doing, and I'm actually walking around and speaking to it, throughout the day. So when I say it's the speaker I listen to the most, I'm not at all exaggerating. So when I saw the technical features of this TreVolo U and understood the improved speaker components that were put in here, I was genuinely excited. I've had speakerphones that I've been using for 20 something years now. And originally when we had corded phones and it was a speaker built into your base of your phone, I've always, even back then, realized that, man, I wish they put some higher quality speaker components in there, because they're tinny and they're distorted, and it's just not a good experience. And they oftentimes would wear out, or even blow a little bit and distort constantly. So never, it always amazed me at a speakerphone how the lack of technology they put in the actual speaker itself. It was kind of surprising for me. But that continued through even when I got my separate Bluetooth speakers. Again, lots of great features and lots of technology there, but the speaker itself was still lacking. So when I had a chance to get this TreVolo, and it was a two-way design, which meant automatically that they understood if they wanted to improve the sound, you have to put different drivers in there. And they did that, and on top of that, incorporated a passive radiator. It just meant to me that this should, on paper anyway, sound a lot better. And after using it for almost 2 weeks now, I can tell you that it does. It's a tremendous improvement. It's going from from lo-fi to hi-fi in the audio, stereo world. And it's if you're at all appreciative of better sound, which I'm sure all of us are, for me, that distorted sound and that low quality tinny sound was fatiguing. By the end of the day, there were some days I just couldn't stand to listen to that anymore, and I would turn it down to a very low volume on my old speakerphone because it was just annoying. And I can tell you that that's not the case here. This technology, it's the speakers themselves, but it's also the equalization that they do to tune in and the human voice. That's a big factor, and that's why you're in meetings, right? It's why you're online learning. You're there to absorb that information and understand it. And if it's coming through garbled, you're defeating the purpose. So that is the #1 feature of this speakerphone by far. There are some other qualities here. Of course, you can use it as a music-only speaker. I think there's probably a lot of speakers out there, obviously, that can do that. For me, I'm telling you that if you want to conduct your business throughout the day and you want to get the most out of it, this is the speaker that will do that for you. There is one feature that I would suggest BenQ take a look at for future iterations of this, and it's the mute function. There's only one thing that anyone ever does in a meeting occasionally, and that's mute their microphone. And it needs to be very quick, very easy to do. While it can be done here, you have to push both buttons. You get a little indicator, and it works. It's not it's not horrible, but for one thing, the light indicator in all of these, the way this is angled, you have if it sits further back, you kind of can't see the lights and really what's going on. You do have to sort of grab it and look at it. But when you have a situation where you're in a meeting, let's say, and you feel a sneeze coming on, and the first thing, you have literally seconds here to mute it. You really would like in a perfect world to have something very close, touch sensitive, hit that mute, see a little light come on, and then have your sneeze, and then undo that and have a little light remind you that it's on, and be able to quickly unmute it. That would be the only improvement I would suggest. Outside of that, I think it's a fantastic speakerphone, and it's what I'm going to be using going forward. I don't see myself going backwards to an old tinny, small speaker ever again. As long as I've got this TreVolo U, I think I'll be very happy. So I hope that's was enjoyable for you. I hope you found it informational, and thank you guys for listening in. Stay tuned. I've been working on a new review, so that's coming up pretty soon. So thank you all.